Carrie grew up riding and had her first pony at age 9. She always had a love for horses and spent her youth competing in eventing and dressage. She has worked with horses in multiple disciplines professionally for over 25 years, and she has experience in many areas of the horse industry. Prior to managing the Wild Horse Sanctuary, Carrie and her farrier husband managed a horse farm in Wellington, Florida. For over 20 years, they worked managing high goal polo horses. We're really happy to have Carrie with us today. She is an amazing person. She takes incredible care of all of the horses under her care at Freedom Reins Equine Sanctuary, and she has a wealth of information from her time managing this farm. Of course, this is one organization, and so how they do things may not be exactly the same as how you do them at your facility, but hopefully you'll still glean some insight from this one amazing sanctuary model. Carrie is experiencing the realities of caring for so many horses today, so she's waiting on a vet call. So this presentation is going to be pre-recorded just for your awareness. Hopefully at the end, we'll have a couple minutes if she's still on to ask a couple questions. Carrie, whenever you're ready, you can start the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Echeserreta, and I work at Freedom Reins, which is an equine sanctuary and a forever home for a lucky 545 horses and some wild burros. For us, our mission here at this specific ranch, and of course, everybody's sanctuary or farm or purpose will be different, so I can only speak to what we do. For us, the horses that come here have permanent sanctuary. This is the last stop. They don't get retrained or rehomed or adopted out or sold. So they get to come here and just live as close as possible to how they would if they were out in, on the range and in the wild. So I think it's important to, when you have a sanctuary, is to understand what your purpose and your mission is. And that's going to obviously help you set up your guidelines of how you're going to structure everything. So for us, we're here to honor the horse. It's all about them and the burros and just honoring their needs and what's best for them. And we're on their agenda, and they don't really have to do anything for us. No training, no performance horses here, and just enjoy their life. And it's our job to try and make them as comfortable and stress-free as possible. Who lives here? Who are our residents? Right now, we are busting at the seams at full capacity with 526 horses, 8 mini ponies, 2 mules, 2 mini mules, 2 mini donkeys, 4 wild burros, and 1 Zorse. So currently, we are at 545 horses right now, and I believe we have 3 coming in the next month or so. We obviously are not supporting breeding, so there are no stallions here, or no breeding goes on here. And if somebody needs to get castrated that we're coming and is going to be getting sanctuary with us, we of course get that done right away down in our quarantine. About 85, maybe even more, of our equines are wild or unhandled. Most of them are Mustangs. They get a roam on almost 4,000 acres. It's a former cattle farm, so it's great. It's got great grasses and pastures with really nice large oaks. So it's really perfect environment for these horses. And again, this is, I guess, always reiterating, this is their last stop. We're not into rehoming the animals. They could live here forever, which is great. So this is our small but very dedicated team of 4. We're just a staff of 4. We all do live at the ranch, which is really helpful. So if we need to be doing a night check, if there's somebody who's sick and we have them up in the paddock by the barn, that's very helpful that we all live here and can deal with those kind of situations. Loli is a man that wears many hats, but he's definitely our ranch manager, operations manager, mechanic, and professional farrier, which is my favorite trait about him, is that he's a phenomenal farrier, and we're so blessed to have him here, because with that skill, it really allows us to change the way things are done here as far as dealing with how we process our horses. And it really allows us to do it on the horse's time schedule and not the farriers. So if we had to bring in a farrier, we'd have to rush around and get as many horses as we can seen and done. And that can be a little stressful for everybody involved. So having him with that skill set here has been a big change in the way we approach and do things. Then we have CP. He's our on-site horse trainer, gentler, full gentler extraordinaire. He's wonderful with the Mustangs and young horses and getting them through a gentling program, which is what we are doing now with any foal that's born here in the ranch. They will go through his little gentling program, and he also does farrier work. So he trims the back feet while Lole does the front when they're in the chute, and helps feed and does whatever else he needs to fill in the gaps. Carlos is our wonderful senior ranch hand. He is phenomenal and so helpful, and is a great part of our team. I don't know what we'd do without him. He's out there checking the fences every day and repairing them, checks every water trough, which is essential here, and make sure that they're clean and there's no clogging in or any issues with it. He's out there feeding horses, also helping me with wellness checks. He's just an essential key worker here, and we're so grateful to have him. And then there's me, and I just oversee all the equine care and of all of our 545 residents, and wear whatever hat the guys need me to wear to help fill in for our team. We do a lot of the care ourselves, so as much vet care as possible, working closely under the orders of our vet, of course. But as far as administering medications in the vein or in the muscles, sedating horses, obviously the guys do the trimming of the hooves, they deworm, we vaccinate. The boys do filing of the teeth and also pulling of loose teeth if we need to on our seniors. So we try and do as much care as we possibly can here ourselves, and so it keeps us very, very busy. So some things to consider when working with wild horses. Just it's good to kind of have a plan, or at least to walk through in your mind and get an idea and give it some thought as to when you bring your wild horse to your property for the first time, what kind of pen or enclosure is it going to arrive in and live in. How will you load and unload the wild horse? So unloading always tends to be easier, right? Because we can just back up a trailer to a paddock and unload that way. But loading tends to be more of a challenge until the horse is gentled or trained. Having a plan on how you will handle your wild horse if it gets an emergency situation, if it gets sick or injured, if you plan on gentling the horse before it gets gentled. And also reaching out to your vet and farrier before you bring a Mustang home or a burro, just to make sure that they will work with that animal during the process time of getting him before he's gentled. Some we've learned, I've talked to a lot of people actually have called me wanting us to take their horse because they said that their vet wouldn't work with it and they can't get their feet trimmed because the farrier won't work with them. And so that's probably, an important thing to just circle the wagons on and make sure everyone's on the same page. And then this was kind of a new one for me. My background is in dealing with performance horses, and it was, and that's always micromanagement and being, preventative care in every aspect, and nutrition and conditioning. So it's just, there's so much that goes into it. So it was a little hard for me to make that adjustment of just going, there's some issues that we're not going to be able to treat in our specific situation because of the number of horses we have, and then the lifestyle that they living out, as wild horses and remaining as that. So there's just certain things I had to learn to let go. They're not going to get corrective shoeing, for example, or, I've seen some horses going around with old tendon injuries that, probably didn't heal that great. So there's just stuff I had to learn to leave it in the past and focus on what the purpose and the mission is at this specific sanctuary. And that's, the quality of their life and the lifestyle they live. So, but just have that in your mind there may be issues that arise until these horses are gentle that you're not going to be able to treat. And then keeping a realistic time frame in mind when going to gentle the wild horses. It can take a lot longer than I think is expected sometimes. So I do get a lot of phone calls of people wanting us to take their horses because they said they're too reactive, they're in over their head, they're having difficulty, and they've really, put in a lot of effort and time, and months have passed by and they're still not able to, get a halter on the horse, and they just get really frustrated. So that probably goes back to getting a plan and place, and having the right resources. So maybe a tip trainer or somebody that has experience working with Mustangs. Because, I always tell everybody to keep in mind, it's something have to keep in mind as well all the time when working with them, that they are just more reactive, especially initially when they come into your facility to any little noise and any little stimuli. I feel like their self-survival skills are heightened. So working with them requires a little more strategic planning. So there's a couple things to consider and think about the different setups in your farm for wild horses versus domestic. And I think the most important one to consider is the fence and the height and the material of it. As the wild horses in the burrows might initially test the fencing, especially when they first arrive. Horses here, when they come in, when they arrive to our sanctuary, they go straight down to our quarantine. And the quarantine pens have steel pipe fencing that is 6 foot high. So that tends to do a really good job of just keeping them, contained, and they don't really try. I've never seen them try and test it down in our quarantine. We have two smaller paddocks down in our quarantine that we initially put them in just because they tend to be their most excited and stressed and reactive when they first arrive to the ranch. And so we want to keep them in a smaller contained area as well, so they wouldn't pick up too much speed running around and consider trying to hop the fence and get themselves hurt. And that seems to have prevented any issues like that happening. And once they settle down, then we move them into our two bigger paddocks. But those two paddocks, still the larger ones, have the 6 foot steel pipe panels. Then once the horses have kind of settled in and they're cleared out of quarantine paddocks, they move into the quarantine pasture. Our pasture does have the no climb wire with T-post. Ours is only 4 feet. Ideally, it would probably be nice to have 5 feet, but we just really keep in mind anytime, not to put a lot of pressure on our horses at all, so they wouldn't want to jump the fence or, get so stressed out what they would need to. So we just are always really mindful of that, and we haven't had any issues since we've been here with that. But ideally, it would be nice to have still a 5 foot no climb fence would be, I think, the most cost effective, considering how much acreage there is at this ranch and fencing that needs to be implemented. So I think it's the most cost effective with regards to safety that we can do for this specific ranch. And then back in our chute, we do have 6 foot 6 inch wooden fencing, but it's 6 rails and it's with the big railroad ties for the post. So that's also really, really sturdy. So I just think anytime you're going to have really a situation where you have lots of Mustangs in a small area and they're going to be stressed out and reactive, it's obviously you want to have sturdy fencing that's, of the right height. So when we have them back in the processing area and they're a little stressed out, it's a comfort to know that they have safe fencing containing them. And again, when they arrive and head to our quarantine, the same thing, that it's just a good peace of mind knowing that they have the proper height and material to keep them safe and also to deter them from wanting to jump it. And then again, I'm just having plans on how you would treat your wild horse when it arrives to your property. Knowing even if you're going to gentle the horse down the road, do you have a safe, strong structure to hold that horse and confine it if you do need to do emergency vet care on it? So this is just a couple things of must-haves that we need here at Freedom Range in order to run the sanctuary as best as possible. We really need different infrastructure to contain and to move all the wild horses. So having system of paddocks feeding into alleys that feed into the chute, that feed into a round pen or the trailer are essential for us in order to get everybody where they need to go and do it safely and stress-free for them, or as stress-free as possible. The hydraulic squeeze is a necessity for us in order to trim their feet and also to treat them. There's so many injuries and issues we would not be able to treat if it were not for that hydraulic squeeze. If you can't have, the hydraulic squeeze, or there's not a need for that because your intention is to domesticate your wild horse, it's still not a bad idea to maybe consider even getting a steel chute. Those are just really nice to have to treat certain injuries or even to start to handle your horse. They're a good thing to have for other applications that you might need it for. Here at the sanctuary, it's really important that everyone who works here and handles the horses has a understanding and knowledge of how to administer medication to sedate the horses and also to treat them for certain illnesses or injuries. We have definitely more than 10, but at a minimum we would need 10 heavy steel panels for us to be able to set traps out in the pastures to catch an injured or sick horse, because our pastures, the two main pastures, are over 1,000 acres each one. So that's definitely a need for us in order to find a safe way to transport them into the chute for treatment. And then here there's a great system that the ranch owner started, and it works really wonderful for so many purposes. But we make friends with our Mustangs when they come into the quarantine using Sweet Feed. Wild Mustangs obviously don't know what Sweet Feed is, but do they learn fast once they know it. And it's a great way, we're learning that, to have them get interested in us. If we didn't do that, we started noticing that they just kind of hang out in the corner and want to avoid us when we come in. They want us to throw the feed, and then as soon as we leave, they come over. But once they started associating us with Sweet Feed, they get more interested in it and curious about it. So that's a great thing that we implement here and use all the time, as you'll see in a little bit. And for us, as we grow our team here, our care team, it's really important to have experienced staff. So if they can have experience in wild horse care, that's even better, because we've worked with horses a lot, and no matter how good of a horse person you are or how much knowledge you have, there's always still so much to learn, and it's still very dangerous. Horses in general are dangerous, and working with wild horses is definitely has a lot of safety issues too that you need to think about. So definitely having an experienced staff as we grow is going to be a necessity for us. And we need to have a plan for our seniors. Our seniors, even though they're older, they're still wild, and we can't, just treat them as you would a domesticated older horse. So we do, have a plan for them, and we do bring them in, as I'll discuss a little bit later, and show how we care for them. But that is a must here for us. We have so many horses, and they do age out, so we need to make sure we have a place for them in part of our program. We also have changed things here a little bit. We do halter train and kind of gentle and go through a program here with our horse trainer. Any foal that's born on the ranch, or if we have an incoming one who's a youngster, a year or so of age, then we'll put them through our gentling program. We're also realizing we have a couple horses with special needs that have just arrived, so they're going to go through our gentling program too, as they're young and they're going to need lifelong care. So we need to get them through our program as well. And that's just for them to be able to have a less stressful life, because we're going to be needing to interact with them a lot, and we want them to be comfortable and calm about it. Another thing essential for us to be able to work this farm and this sanctuary is having a good working relationship with our local vet, and we do, and we're so grateful. It's so important to work with a vet that understands your mission and the purpose of your farm or your sanctuary, what you're doing, so you guys can be on the same page and get creative and innovative of how you're going to deal with every scenario, as it is different treating and working with and taking decisions on the care and quality of life for the wild horses. It's a different set of standards, I think, sometimes, at least in our situation. And lucky for us, we have 2 farriers here, so we don't have to worry about that. But that is another thing to make sure that you have a good understanding and working relationship with your vet and farrier. And we have to remind ourselves all the time, just be patient. It's all about the horses. We're on their time schedule. This is all about them and honoring them. This is their place where they have sanctuary, and we have to do things that's best for them. So that's what we're constantly reminding ourselves, and also trying to come up with and be creative of ideas of how can we, go trap, make it trap, and how can we make it, not a negative experience, or how can we go catch this horse and make it not a negative experience. And so we're constantly trying to invent and rethink ways to do it differently for the horse's benefit. They're always first and foremost here. And then just always reminding myself and remembering to understand that the wild horses just are more sensitive in general and tend to be a little bit more reactive. So having that in the back of my mind always when we're working with them. So when we do an intake of horses, They go straight down to our quarantine and they'll stay there for about 4 to 6 weeks. And then they will, once we know everybody's okay and we've had time to, vaccinate and deworm and get them familiar with us and get them hooked on sweet feed, then we'll turn them out into a quarantine pasture, which is still separated from everybody else, all of our main residents on the ranch. And they'll stay there for often, again, it just depends the time that they need to decompress and adjust, but we also like to keep them there for in case there's any possible pregnancies. We've learned that as well is the best thing to do is just keep them there for the time you need to, just to rule that out so you don't have any surprises when they're out in the main pastures. Our quarantine area consists of 4 different paddocks. We have 2 large ones that feed in via alleys into 2 other ones. We have one is the smallest, the one on the right here, and that's perfect because it feeds into our alley where the horses get loaded and unloaded. So we've learned when the horses come here, we really don't know what we're getting or how reactive they are or what they're going to do. So we put them in our smaller paddock first and kind of let them get used to anything so they don't have too much room to run around and get themselves all worked up, or they tend to settle down more, and we keep them in the small paddock for a day or so, and then we can move them into the bigger paddock next door and then into one of our larger ones. But it's been really helpful to have everything interconnected, and the alleyways are key for us to be able to move them safely into the trailer or into our steel chute down in the quarantine, which is where we administer their first dewormer, take their neck tags off if we need to, or treat them if they have any issues. We can do it all safely down there and move them around safely with the system of the alleys and the gates. So this is just a quick clip of some horses arriving to our quarantine and unloading, just showing how that they can come off the trailer and then go down into this alley, which feeds into that small paddock and makes the whole process pretty easy and stress-free. So I mentioned sweet feed training. It's just, and so I just thought it'd be helpful to show a little clip. These horses had just come out of our quarantine holding paddock, so they were introduced to sweet feed and obviously alfalfa down and holding, and this is their first day out in the quarantine pasture. So we just use it as a way to get them familiar with the Kawasaki mule, so when they see me out in the big pastures, once they are turned out in those big pastures, when they see me driving every day to come and do horse checks, instead of me trying to always get up to them, they come over to me and looking for some, lovely sweet feed. And it's a great way just for me to have them get close to me so I can, give everybody a once over and make sure nobody has any cuts or has any issues going on. And it's a real wonderful tool and a wonderful way for us to be able to do our wellness checks here and so much acreage with so many horses. It's really been a wonderful little plan that the ranch owner had implemented at the very beginning, and we just continue to build on it. This is the end result, we call it, of sweet feed training. It's just a quick video of showing after, these guys have been in 2 at our farm for about 6 months, and it was just wonderful. We needed to catch them. They were out in a pasture, probably about 300 acres, and we needed to catch them and bring them down into the holding area to do their feet and to deworm them. And it was wonderful just to show up in the mule. And since they know what that means, that there's a potential sweet feed, this is the end result. We don't have to push them on 4-wheelers or get them stressed out or run a risk of anybody jumping a fence or getting separated from their family. That's CP, the horse trainer. He worked with about 10 of these foals in this group. So he's just very happy to know that the training is working and that they come and follow us. And it's just a fun way to bring in the horses rather than a stressful way. So that's a really big, important tool we use here. And then down the road, if we need to not just bring them in and lure them from pasture to pasture, but if we actually need to catch or trap an injured wild horse while they're out in the main pastures, we also use the mule with sweet feed to lure them into the trap. So it's just been a really great not really a training, but a way of association that we use that helps us get a lot of things done and is, again, as stress-free as possible for the horse. The other thing that's nice about all of our incoming wild horses getting to know what sweet feed is and pellets is down the road they will be seniors, and a lot of our seniors go on, pellets or chopped feed. So it's just great that they know other things than grass and hay. And then this is just another video of us, using the treat wagon again to move them. They're out in a huge pasture now, over 1,000 acres. And it's just so wonderful to be able to bring them in that way. I can't emphasize it enough. It's been a game changer for us. They used to have to push in all of the horses, or 300 horses at a time, and then run them through a series of pens to try and get to the injured or sick horse. And being able to lure them or trap them through the use of sweet feed is just been a big benefit for the horse's well-being. So basic care that every wild horse and burro on this farm will get is, we process them. Our team, our staff does it. We do that twice a year. They will get their annual vaccines, but then we deworm twice a year, trim the hooves twice a year, and the guys will float teeth for horses that need it and pull teeth if as needed. A lot of our seniors start to get that issue, so that's something that we do twice a year. The horses graze for about 6 to 7 months out of the year, again, just depending how much rain we got and how tall the grass got. But we normally start feeding in late fall and all the way until early spring, and they will eat our homegrown. We have about 170 acres of hay fields that we plant, and it's oat, barley, wheat, big half-ton bales, and so that's what we feed them. We do have our seniors and a special needs pasture set aside for horses with special needs, or our oldies, and they'll get alfalfa, higher protein, and pelleted feed or chopped feed as needed. So this is just a couple little videos to show how we do the feeding here. We just load up 2 of the half-ton bales on the back of a feeding truck and take it to the horses and flake it off herd to herd. We feed about an average of 5 to 6 of the half-ton bales per day to our horses that are out in the main pastures. And again, we'll feed them till from late fall to early spring, just depending how much rain we got in the winter and how soon our spring grass is popping up. A lot of our horses don't like to come down to the valley and eat. They like to stay up top. So we'll take our hay truck all the way up to the mountain for them and make sure that they get their portion of feed as well. This is our oldies group. Again, we have them separate off in a couple different pastures of about 15 to 20 to 30 acres, depending on which pasture they're in. And they'll just have pretty much free range hay, and we will supplement with senior. And they do, have issues. A lot of the issues that we get with our seniors is obviously the teeth. So it's really great that Loriano and CP can both file down the teeth and also pull any of the loose teeth from our older horses. That is definitely the most common issue we have with our oldies. And we do bring them in just because they can't keep up with their herds out in the big main pastures. And we do have a lot of, steep hills and stuff like that. And it's just harder on them getting around in general. So we've noticed that they just kind of enjoy when we do bring them in and they have their friends in here and they just eat and don't have to move around so much to get all the essential things that they need. And we can keep a better eye on them too. We see them several times a day versus just once when we do our horse checks. So for us, it works really well to have them in. I had mentioned that we, process our horses twice a year, so they do get their hooves, and they'll get their dewormer twice a year, and then they get their annual vax at one of those processing times. And this is our processing area. To the left is what we call the mesa, but there's a water trap in there, so that's an enclosure where we lure the horses into from the outside pasture. We'll lure them into that gate, and then just throw a little bit of alfalfa around, close that water trap, and then lure them down the hill, or encourage them to go down it, and then they run down the alley and we feed them into one of the holding paddocks down there, and they wait for their turn to get their hooves done and dewormed. So this is just a couple photos of our chute area. So after the horses come down and they're fed into those holding paddocks, we'll bring them in groups of 4 to 5 at a time and walk them into the tub, and then they'll go down into the alley and to get their hooves done and dewormed. And this is the inside of our hydraulic squeeze. You can see all the padding in there. And then you can kind of see the walkway where we have our steel chute, and then that feeds into the hydraulic squeeze. And then I just thought it'd be helpful because it's always hard to explain, but I'm a visual person, so I enjoy when I can see something rather than hear about it. So that's just how the horses come in from the water trap that you saw earlier down this alley that'll feed them into the paddocks where they stay with their own family. We don't mix horses, we don't rush them all in at one time. We're again really grateful because we have 2 farriers on staff all the time, or on site, excuse me, all the time. So we can just process a horse's family by family, and that way we just notice a huge difference in their stress level. Obviously, there's no separation. They all come in just together. We don't rush them. We're not trying to get 100 horses done in a day. It's all on their own schedule. And we've noticed a big difference in the years of doing it that way. They're just calmer every time, and it gets better and better every time. So there's no rushing allowed. It's all about them. We're on their time schedule, not ours. And that's something we always remind ourselves about, that this is for their benefit, and we'll be patient and wait. If we get 20 horses done a day, great. And if we don't, we don't. Whatever's best for them. So that's just CP moving them down into the alley that feeds into the chute. And I just thought I'd show the whole process because, again, it's hard to, or at least for me, to envision it. But again, just how important are all the gates and the alleys, and giving the horses a second to think. We've learned to, rather than just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing all the time, kind of going through little stations. So they go into the alley, we kind of give them a second. Then they came into here and he gave them a second before he closes this gate on them. Then we want them to obviously walk into the tub, but give them a minute to kind of just lick and chew and take it in and think. They tend to, they're teaching us that is what they need. And so we do our best to make sure that we honor that. So again, just trying not to push them and force them and get them upset. They don't really love it, so we try and make it as calm and peaceful as possible. And these are a bunch of Devil Gardens mares. I think this was their second time going into the chute, if I recall right. So then, yeah, they all line up into the alley. And then we will close this one door here that you'll see him close. And again, just being mindful of not standing up and, stressing them out, being, behind them or top of them. We always bend down low so we don't have to stress them out by them going, oh gosh, you're on top of me, you're above me, what do you want, what are you going to do? So we really try and be mindful of our space and theirs. And then just separating one there. And we're learning that their friends like to sit and wait for them. It's better than we thought maybe, if we just brought one at a time or two. No, we're learning they just want to come in with their friend group and wait. And that's what we're learning is best for them. And then sometimes, we're just giving her a second to think there. And CP will just gently rub his hands, and, sometimes on the rear end, just to let them know, like, okay, let's go forward. And now they, move from the steel chute, obviously, into the hydraulic. And then we did make one adjustment. That pin that he just handed CP right now, if you end up using a hydraulic squeeze, is essential, because sometimes the horses will bang back. We've learned, they go forward and then they try and slam back, and that can open up, just even an inch or two, just enough to get a hoof, maybe, or, the heel of the hoof caught in that door. So we had a pin welded on, so we can just have another protection there to make sure that that back door doesn't even get in, not even a quarter of an inch. We don't want any gaps in that door at all. So then once they're in the squeeze, they get squeezed slightly enough to hold them and then to turn them on their side. And we were just using the electric grinders, but then we noticed some horses like this guy on your left here, Reindeer. He was just super, super stressed out about it. And then my husband's like, let's just do the nippers and see if that, takes away his stress. And it completely did. As you can see, he's really not bothered by it now. It was a game changer. So he let us know that that doesn't work for him. But then you can see this paint Mustang mare doesn't seem to bother her that much at all. Reindeer really would get upset and shake and just get really nervous. So that's another thing that we've learned, is to really just kind of try everything. If the horse is really really reactive, then try something else. Just don't try and make one size fit that doesn't. Just like people, we all are different and need different things and learn differently, and they're the same. Then common injuries and ailments that we see often and that we're able to treat. So hooves, we do see abscesses, and now we won't necessarily treat an abscess on a wild horse. Can get tricky. But if the horse is having a hard time getting around and they're out in one of our big pastures in the back, we will go and set a trap and bring them and one of their friends in and bring them into the chute area to a smaller paddock where they don't have to hobble around, and struggling trying to get water and feed until that abscess pops. Laminitis, we do see it, and so we just try and be preventative on it, on the forefront of it, knowing who already is prone to it, bringing them in before the spring grass gets going. But that's another condition. We are now in the process of building a bigger dry lot so we can contain the horses there before the spring grass gets really going, those that are prone to it. The thing that we see a lot here that I had no experience working in show barns at all is eye issues. In the summer and the fall, we get a lot of foxtails. Well, a lot. There will be several horses that will have foxtails in their eyes, or corneal ulcers, or just some trauma to the eye. And treating a wild horse with an eye issue uh, was, I have to say, very creative invention with my husband. He's very innovative about it, very patient. And the horses have surprised me. I thought, oh, this is going to be impossible. We're never going to be able to do this. But, it's amazing how smart they are. And we've had one of the most reactive and wild mares on this ranch get a foxtail in her eye. And we had to treat her eye 2 times a day with 3 different ointments in the eye. And I thought, oh, this is just, never going to, I don't know how we're going to do it. By the 5th day, that mare would trot in on her own. We'd open all the gates and open up the alley, and she would trot in to that chute on her own and just wait and let us do it. We didn't even have to try and put a halter on her or anything else or medicate her. It was tranquilize her. It was amazing. She just she was like, all right, don't touch, don't pet me, don't try and do anything else. Just put that ointment in and let me out. So they've surprised me. And the guys have gotten pretty good at treating all the eye issues that we have, but that's something we do see a lot. More than I ever had before. Colics, they tend to be pretty rare just for the horses that are turned out. They're doing what they're designed to do. So we don't see those that often. And then, of course, the horses manage to cut themselves and get infections. And one thing a drug we learned about that I'd never heard before, so I definitely want to make sure to share this. It's called Exceed. And if you don't know, now you do, and I didn't know, and it is the best antibiotic to use for wild horses. It's long acting, so unlike penicillin, where you have to give them 2 injections per day for a period of 10 to 14 days, this you have to give 3 different, depending on the injury and depending on the amount of medication your vet prescribes for you, but you would have to do a maximum 3 injections over a period of 14 days. So it's a game changer. 15 cc's is normally the prescribed amount for any kind of injury that they prescribe antibiotics. So game changer, Exceed. If you don't know about it, please take a note on it. It'll really help you out. And I think I just put a little video of just showing this was a mare, a wild mare that we'd been treating for 2 days. And you can't see, but CP's up next to my husband there. So he's the one holding, she's not halter trained, but they put a halter on her, have the rope kind of over a pole so he can hang on to it. And Lorena is just putting one of the ointments in. And it can be tricky, obviously, not just because they're wild horses, but it's also painful. Often the times, their eyes really sore. So it can be a bit of a trick, but he always amazes me how he manages to pull it off. And then this is Africa. Africa gets hurt more than any horse on this ranch. Um, this was probably her third injury that year. But just showing how we would treat, spraying a horse there. And then this mare we found with this just giant infection going on. She had obviously cut herself with something, and the infection had already started. So we gave her a round of 3 different injections, of Exceed, and that cleared up. But these are all extremely wild horses, and we could never treat them without the hydraulic squeeze or the steel chute or Exceed. It is a game changer. Sorry about. So here's just a couple clips of things that we do when we have them in the back and they're getting processed in our chute. We just try to always create positive associations with anything we need to do with them. So giving them sweet feed while they're waiting to try again and just say, hey, this is okay, this is not terrible. And we do that every time we bring them in, so they come to expect it. And then it's not necessarily that they want to be in the squeeze or in the chute, but they have some positive association with it that is helpful. And then here's Africa coming out of the squeeze, and you'll see her stop at the little green treat bucket that has sweet feed in it. And we do that every time we process every horse. So they have now come to expect their treat bucket, almost like a little kid at the doctor's office wanting, the lollipop. So we just little things to do. But for us, with this many horses, I know some people don't love, treat reinforcement, but for us, it works really well for them to have that association. So one question I get asked a lot is, how do you catch one of your horses if they're injured or need to get brought in for care if they're out in one of your big pastures? So again, our main 2 pastures where most of the herds are out in are each over 1,000 acres. So it's pretty big, and we wouldn't be able to just lure them sometimes all the way down into our chute. So if that's the scenario, what the guys do is take about 10 of those heavy steel panels and go set them near a water trough where this particular herd of horses likes to go to drink, or often, just where they hang out, because they all kind of do have their own real estate on the ranch of where they like to rest and relax. So once we know that, we'll take the panels out and set them up. And what the guys do then is we'll take a mule with some sweet feed. So there's where our sweet feed comes in again. Put that in the back of our Kawasaki mule and drive it in to the pen. We have an opening and then an exit. So we'll just drive the mule in with the sweet feed, and then the horses start to follow. And then when we have the horse that we want in there, along with a couple others, we'll close the entrance and the exit to the pen, and then slowly start to let out who we don't need. We always do bring in one friend for the injured horse from their group or their herd, so they don't come in alone. And so once that happens, and we have the hurt horse and their buddy trapped into the trap, we send for their Uber, which is our tractor and trailer, and then the guys will drive that up, and then we load them in to the trailer. And then I just did include a video of what that can kind of look like, because it's probably common sense to a lot of other people, but it took me a minute to figure out how we were going to do it. But we just, keep them in this pen, as you can see, and then the space, rather than trying to push them in or make it a real stressful situation, we just go slowly, making the area smaller. So we're moving one panel at a time and just making the process kind of at a pace where they can digest it and understand what's happening. And we're learning that works really well. And they'll often do what Blackjack and his friend is doing right here, and just hopping in the trailer at their own comfortable pace. So once they do that, we take them down to our chute, treat them for whatever time we need to, and then when it's time to release them back, we take them, load them back up in the truck, and trailer and Uber them out to where their family is and release them with their family so they don't have to go wandering around looking for them. So, one question I get asked a lot is how do you catch? We do halter train, like I had mentioned, and gentle our foals and youngsters. The main purpose of it, again, for us is not for riding programs and retraining and adopting them. Lucky for them, they just get to hang out here for the rest of their lives. But it is really helpful that they know, how to lead, that we can, so see people desensitize them, their whole body to everything. So we can pick up all their feet, so we can put a blanket on them if we needed to. He wipes down all their eyes all the time, they're brushed, so they're used to all of that. And then he works on aerosol sprays, or just starts with like spraying water. So if we need to, if they would get a cut or something, like we just walk up with our aerosol can and spray them. Um, and it worked great. One of the he had worked with a 2-year old, and it got a huge cut and needed a treatment. And but it, instead of having to bring in the whole family and deal with all of that or set a trap, it was so wonderful just to walk out, put a halter on him, give him his antibiotic there, flush out his wound, put some dressing on it, and just check on him, every day that way. It's such a game changer. The horses don't get stressed out. It's time saver for us, but it's really, really for them. They don't have to be pulled from their family or their friends. It's just an easier way for us. And he also teaches them to load and unload. So kind of everything a domestic horse needs to do other than, a riding and doing a sport. So I hope some of the things that we touched on have been helpful or can be helpful or implemented in some way to the work you need to do with your wild horses. There's so many things that we did touch base on. There's so much that goes into all this care, as you all I'm sure know. But we were just trying to highlight things that are specific to our setup in this ranch that have really helped us make things better here and smoother and less stressful for our horses and for us. So as you've seen now through the entire little slideshow here, Sweet Feet is what makes the world go round in our ranch. We use it for everything. It builds great associations, and we've noticed a horse's demeanor has really shifted from the moment we got here. We saw a little bit of a different, they're a little more reactive, a little more anxious, and now after 4 years of really just constantly using the Sweet Feet and the positive associations, it's wonderful when I go out to do my horse check to have the horses come running down to say hi and see what, not to see me, I know, to see what I have in the treat wagon, but it's still a really nice way to be able to get that part of the job done and to check on them. So that's for us. I hope it has been a wonderful thing that we implement here, and maybe it can be helpful to someone else. Then if you're bringing in a wild Mustang, pairing it with a domestic horse can be really helpful. It's just nice if they have a non-reactive horse to pair up with. So if you're interacting with your domestic horse, they're not, having another wild horse would be signaling panic as well and fleeing, right? So they just kind of get worse together and want to flee together. But it's always helpful if they have domesticated horse. So when you're interacting with that horse, they just don't have anything sending off a signal that they need to be in panic. So you can use your domestic horse to get closer to that one. And it also, I think, calms the wild horse down. They start to realize that there's no threat, that you are not the threat. And they learn that pretty easy from the domesticated horse. So that can be a helpful little thing. And then the next thing is probably really obvious, but Mustangs, especially when they initially come in, are at their most reactive and they're most nervous. So they definitely will fare better in an open outside space, not in an enclosure, in a stall. And then just again, always remember to take time. It can seem a little overwhelming or a little frustrating if things don't progress as quickly as we'd like them to, but it's definitely worth it. And earning the trust of one of these horses is, I think, one of the best rewards, at least at our job here. I just love it. But it can be a task, and you definitely have to put in the time. So it can be helpful if you don't have experience working with a wild horse or a burro to pair up with somebody that does, or contact a tip trainer, or maybe just have somebody on speed dial that you can ask some questions to or get guidance. It can be helpful to make it a little less overwhelming. And if you're starting a sanctuary or thinking of starting one, I definitely would recommend just like dipping your toe first in the pool with a couple Mustangs first before maybe adopting 2 families or something. There is a little bit of a process, I think, and a flow and a little shift that you need to have in how you deliver your care. And once you get a little experience in it, it'll be much easier then to take on more numbers of horses. But I would definitely just start with a few and kind of learn and establish how you're going to set things up at your farm and then go from there. And this is a completely different side note, but if it can be helpful if you're going to have horses and they're going to live out in as wild horses like ours do here in large pastures, to set your water troughs on like some cement and have grooves in it so it's not slippery, and it'll help also wear down their hooves when they're hanging out around the water trough like they all love to do, or walking on it. It can be a little bit of help to help keep those hooves worn down a little bit.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for all of the incredible information. It was wonderful to learn about your facility, and I love the treat wagon and all the positive reinforcement that all the horses at Freedom Reins get, so that all the care that you can do is not stressful and is the best experience possible. If you have a few minutes, I know we had a couple questions, so if you do have a few minutes to hang around, I bet we have a couple questions that folks would like answered. But if you do need to hop off, just let me know.
No, hi, sorry, my last clip I had one, I don't know what happened to my audio. So I was apologizing for all my ums and my this and my that. I am not a person that's normally putting together any kind of presentation, but I just thought it was a great idea to have a platform to share some information, because it is a nuance taking care of wild horses, or at least for me, and there wasn't a lot of information out there. So I apologize for anyone who had to hear all of my ums and stuttering through it, but I was happy to try and share what we've learned. And again, we're not know-it-alls by any means. We are humble participants learning how to work and take care of all these beautiful horses and just do our best. So we're not by any means trying to tell anyone how to do it, just sharing again what's working for us and learning as we go. So I know I have a lot to learn, but hope some of it was helpful. And I'm trying to figure out how to turn on my video, but that's how I do everything, last minute, trying to figure it out.
Maybe in the bottom left corner.
You're so sweet. You're like, it's not that hard, lady. Come on.
No, you got this. And the presentation was so good. It was incredible. I don't know why you're selling yourself short. It was perfect.
Let's just see if this works. I have no idea. I keep clicking it, but it's not. So I might be just a voice from the great beyond, guys.
Oh, good.
Figure it out. But I'm happy to answer any questions while I'm waiting for the vet of our new foal that was born.
Does anyone have any questions for Carrie?
Oh, there it worked. Hey.
Oh, yay. Hey.
Look at me getting all tech savvy.
Let's see.
Hi, Carrie. I'm curious about both your steel chute and the hydraulic chute.
Yes.
Do you guys have somebody just make the steel chute and weld it for you, or is there an actual place that you get the regular steel chute without the hydraulics?
You can, I mean, I can link up the manufacturer that has the steel chute that we have, the hydraulic.
Awesome.
I did include a link in it, and I'll try and pull that back up or send it to Tess because she's way more savvy than me. Maybe can add it to it. But as far as the system, the structure that was there, like the tub and the alleys and all of that lead into our chute, that was all just done by a welder.
Okay, that's what I was curious. Yeah, if you have a link to a steel chute or even just like dimensions and product plans for your welder that did it, that would be awesome.
I can get that too. Would it just be to you, Tess? I can send an email with all of, I'll make notes of all these things and make sure I get the info to her. And
Definitely.
then we can get it to everybody.
Thank you so much.
No, of course.
Hello, Carrie. This is Diane from Wild Horse Rescue Center. We're located in Florida.
Oh, hi, fellow Floridian. Hello.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. You're from down in Wellington, I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Marianne Simmons is from down there, a very dear friend of ours. She's really tried to help the wild horses since the 70s. I don't know if you know her, but I've been a wild horse person working with Mustangs for 32 years. I
Wow.
started my rescue in '07. We tried really hard here in Florida to make sanctuary because I've been to the Black Hills 5 times, returned to Freedom once, and I've helped people send horses to Jill Star. So Netta had 3 of my horses. She still has 1. But it is really tough because Florida is actually a really good state. It could be in certain areas for horses. I know with the feet issues, we are unable to get a hydraulic squeeze. It was a 1.5 year wait, but the price is really hefty. We
Right.
tried to get one, but we do not use a hydraulic. We have to use a humane squeeze, which is like a triangular. Matter of fact, we're laying some horses down. We have to use sedation. It's really tough doing it the way we have to do it because the hydraulic's the way to go. But Florida could support sanctuary land. The feet, for example, on Florida soil can be buffed enough that you don't, as long as you have diverse land. I've used 600 acres twice in my years of wild horses. By people allowing me to have horses on their 600 acres, but it wasn't mine. And the feet were just incredible on a land like diverse where it had wet, dry, uplands, trees, and they were on grass. We did need to hay in the cold snaps, not that we get very many in Florida, but you could put the rounds out there or alfalfa blocks to help with that. So I would love to see one come to Florida. We're a very small center. We're 42 acres located near Orlando.
Oh, great. That's great. Sounds like you have the system, a lot of experience at it and that a good setup.
Well, yeah, but we wish that, is there anybody or interest to ever put one on the East Coast? All the sanctuaries are like the Black Hills. I don't
No,
think
you're
they're
right.
taking anymore. I know Claire Staples isn't open to taking from, too many rescues. She might take from the kill pens. I know Netta and them probably are full. Jill Star, of course, is full. We have never heard of your center, so you're a new place. But it's tough to bring horses from Florida to California on the fact of the hauling and the fees.
For sure. No, of course. Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm really out of the loop in the network as far as even other sanctuaries. We don't get a lot of time off of this ranch ever. Going to the grocery store seems like a special event here these days. So I'm really not familiar, unfortunately, to connect with any other possibilities of the East Coast. I think too, it'd be great. Yeah, I'm really familiar with the Florida landscape, and I think it would be wonderful, especially up north where you are. And not down in South Florida where it's really expensive and just as muggier and the bugs are pretty bad down there. But yeah, it would be great to see some out on the East Coast. There's definitely the land for it.
Right, because northern Florida and certain areas of Florida could definitely support it. We are over by Claremont. We're actually in a beautiful area. I mean,
Yeah.
Villages sadly is buying up everything and making development, but we have absolutely beautiful land here in the Sumter County area that we live. But it is tough. It's tough also trying to find promoters or stuff. I mean, we've been doing this, like I said, I've been 32 years with Mustangs, but since '07 as a nonprofit, and it's tough trying to find the right connections
Yes.
to all of a sudden just find that land. I mean, I flew out to Colorado and looked at 500 acres last year. We really would love to have some type of sanctuary in this southern area. So I don't know if we can network or if you know of any people, or maybe we can put that out there.
No, yeah, that'd be great. I think, yeah, I mean, if networking, I think is definitely how it's gonna is needed in this little community. I didn't really think there were too many resources. When I look for them, I don't easily find them because I understand everybody is really busy, but you're right. There's so much wonderful land and good land out for these horses out there. It'd be wonderful to help implement and start some sanctuaries on there. So yeah, if getting information and connecting would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Pat, I think I saw your hand first.
Hi, yes. I hope you can hear me okay. What I was wondering is, do you have some sort of agreement? How do you obtain so many horses and are they titled to you?
They are originally when she started this sanctuary back in 2014, when she founded it, it was starting with just kill pen horses. So she was rescuing, so a lot of them were domesticated to some degree, or you kind of got a mix of what you got from the kill pen. But then she's really moved from doing that, now just taking in families that would have from the range, wild horses that would have otherwise been separated. So she works with different groups and organizations. We don't take owner surrenders anymore or anything of that nature. And just working with other people and groups that are already kind of on the, advocating for some of these families on the range. We work with those advocate groups to help keep the rounded up families together, and she likes taking them in here. So that's how we end up with so many so quick. Is she'll end up taking, like we just took in a herd called Blondie's family from the Pine Nut area. And that was 18 horses we took in at one time. So the family could all stay intact and together and didn't get separated, going through the BLM program and the AIP and all those other incentive programs they have. So that's how she has grown so quick.
So you don't have, so you don't have to work with the BLM, you work with these other groups?
She does. I mean, yes and no, but yes. I mean, they all are titled, but again, sometimes getting them through other groups. And then we are the housing. This is where they come to get.
Okay.
So we provide sanctuary. She asks everybody else to deal with all of the other paperwork and that part of it. Since, that she'll give them the end of the road solution of, we'll have the forever care provided for these Mustangs you want to rescue, but everybody else, so these advocate programs, they're the ones that go through all the paperwork and the organization of getting that done and getting them the shipping and everything here. We're just on the receiving end.
Gotcha. So can you get horses out of holding, long-term holding?
That, I'm really not that familiar. I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I'm sure, I would imagine there's a way, but I wouldn't be the person that could give you the right answer, unfortunately. But I can look into that because now I'm curious. So,
well, I'm curious too.
Me as well. I apologize. I don't.
No, that's okay.
The clarity, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Yeah. Well, you did a good job. Thank you.
No, I'm trying. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Sierra?
Yeah, hi, Carrie, it's Ciara. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. My question actually was really similar to Pat's. Maybe if you could just clarify. So are you bypassing the BLM?
No.
Somehow? Okay.
No, there's no route as far as my knowledge to doing that. She's, again, just working with advocate programs that they're directly working with the BLM and getting the horses out of holding or bidding on them. I don't even really know how the BLM auctions work. I don't partake in that part of it. But no, she's not bypassing. It's just not involving directly. We're asking the advocates who want to save these horses to deal with it, and then we'll house them, the horses, obviously.
Okay, so then is the BLM or the advocate program, are they requiring you to take them through a gentling process and prove that? Because I'm going through that right now with my Mustang. And, yeah.
No, I mean, a gentling process from the BLM, like a mandate from the BLM?
Yeah. Yeah, like my Mustang has to go through gentling before. He's with a tip trainer right now. He'll have to go through the gentling process before I can adopt him. And then once I adopt him, I have him for a year, then I get title to him. And I was curious, like, if there's a way to kind of work around that or have them come directly to me, kind of like what sounds like what you guys are doing. Yeah.
I mean, I can't again speak to the gentling. That's new to me. But again, I don't really involve myself in the BLM part of it. I'm just the caretaker here of the horses, so that's really my focus. But we've not, to my knowledge, have we had to have these horses have to go through a program before they're eligible for official adoption and titling here. What we have had, I do visit with the BLM. They do come here and do site inspections. So once the horses have their title released, they saying that they're here, we go and we match up the freeze brands with the BLM representative, and they inspect the condition and the health of the horse. And that's pretty much where it ends, as far as my communication and understanding, with the BLM and working with them. I don't know if that's
Okay.
helpful or not. I can't really speak to your situation because that's not been something I personally have gone through, but I can find out more about that through some of the contacts and people that I have, and would definitely get back to you.
I appreciate that, Carrie. And it looks like some people are chiming in on chat, so I'll check that out as well. But thank
great.
you.
Yeah, great. Perfect.
Thanks for- Okay, take care.
You as well.
Lisa?
Hi. I wanted to ask about, can you hear me okay? Okay. The fencing, if you were going to redo your perimeter fencing, what would you recommend for perimeter fencing? I understood all the internal needs in different areas,
Right.
but what would you recommend for a large area if we have to redo the current perimeter
Sure.
cost effectively? But
No,
for
I think
mistakes.
that's always the part, right? Trying to be cost effective in regards to safety.
Yeah.
We butt up to a cattle farm on one of our perimeters, and they
Mhm.
had barbed wire. And again, this is a really large ranch. There's tons and tons of footage, obviously, that needs to get done. But ideally, I love the no climb. I know it's expensive, but it's we never have to. I've seen it where people do just wires to straight wire, kind of like barbed wire, but without the barbs.
Without the barb?
But I have seen legs go through that and,
Okay.
stuff. So that made me get just where I thought, well, gosh, again, in a perfect world where there's resources, I would do the no climb at a 5 foot. I would go
5
higher
feet.
than what ours is.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
we
5
don't-
feet is enough?
Again, once they're and the way we do it is that, they have all that time, the decompression time. So they don't go out to our main pastures for a good 6 to 12 months. They have quarantine paddocks, then they go to a quarantine pasture. So that's their first introduction.
Right.
Kind of thing. So they're kind
They're
of
happy.
in a mind state, you know what I mean, before they go out there. And then we're just always mindful of not putting pressure on them up against that fence ever.
Right. Of course.
So,
Okay.
On their own, in my experience, I've never seen them want to go over the perimeter fence. On
Right.
their own.
Yeah.
So no, I would think 5 feet would be fine because we're fine with 4 feet, to be honest, but I would sleep better at night if we had 5.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
No, sure.
Does anybody else have any final questions? I see lots of discourse in the chat, which is awesome. And feel free to connect with me, connect with Carrie, or even, use our social media to connect with each other to continue discussing these topics. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us in that case. I mentioned in the chat, but I'll get a recording out to everybody who registered via email, but also on our social medias and on our YouTube page. So thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Carrie, for the amazing presentation.
No,
I really appreciate it.
Of course. I'll get you the links of those things that I meant to have in my last clip that didn't make it for whatever reason.
Thank you.
Get that. All right. Thanking you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate everybody wanting to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll learn a lot just going through the chat. So thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.